19th to order. At this time, I'm asking you to please all silence your electronic devices. In addition, throughout the meeting, please make sure to press the button so we can hear you. Miss Lisa, if you can't hear anyone, we'll make sure to remind them. We'll have two opportunities during the meeting for public comment. Public comments on action items appearing on the agenda are heard before we go to action items, and public comments of the general nature are heard at the end of the meeting. Anyone attending today's meeting in person who wishes to make a public comment is asked to complete a speaker's card. These are available at the reception desk and on the table near the door. Cards should be given to Ms. Lisa Smith. Members of the public who are attending online and wish to make a comment should fill out an electronic speaker card. Good. And at this time, I'm going to ask Mayor Buddy Dyer to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. And I'd like to congratulate Seminole County Commissioner Amy Lockhart, who was elected as board chair for 2023. I'd like to also welcome her to MetroPlan Orlando. Is she here? Not yet. No.
She's not. Her mother is ill and she's probably dealing with that this morning.
Okay. Well, we wish her well. I'd like to also congratulate again Mayor Demings, Commissioner Moore, Commissioner Grebe for securing their re-elections in the primary, and Commissioner Gomez Cordero, Commissioner Janer, and newly elected Orange County Commissioner for District 6, Mike Scott, who was successful on November 8th. The CFMPOA 8 made on October 7th here in Orlando. Commissioner Moore, who's the vice chair of that committee, chaired this meeting and has a report for us this morning, but she's not here. So we're just going to move along and we'll come back and recognize her. On the November 10th meeting of the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board was canceled due to Hurricane Nicole, but was rescheduled and held on November 30th. Mayor Bates chairs that board and has a report for us this morning. Mayor Bates, you are recognized.
Thank you. The TDLCB met Wednesday, November 30th. We also conducted our annual public meeting the same day. We received a mix of comments from TD users, some of whom continue to have issues, mainly related to long hold time on the phone when booking rides, long commute times on the vehicles, and some who had challenges with using Paw Pass. Riders also expressed their gratitude for the service as it is their only travel option. These comments are not new. We continue to hear the same experiences year after year. So I asked staff to establish a quality assurance working group, which would be an extension of the Quality Assurance Task Force. The working group would include representatives who are more closely related to the issues being experienced. Ms. Marilyn Baldwin has expressed interest in leading the working group on behalf of the QATF, and invitations will be extended to staff from Lynx's customer service area, eligibility, dispatch, a driver or supervisor from each of the providers, and a rider from each county. I'm hopeful that a discussion that includes the parties involved would result in some of the issues being resolved, or at a minimum, be better understood. Mr. David Darm, Executive Director of the Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged, attended the meeting and gave a TD 101 presentation. Ms. Marilyn Baldwin, Chairperson of the Quality Assurance Task Force, received the Breaking Barriers Advocacy Award from the CTD. Our agenda items included approval of our August meeting minutes, approval of the 2023 TDLCB meeting dates, approval of 2 new member appointments and 2 reappointments, and acknowledgement of the annual operating report and annual expenditure report. We also had 2 presentations. The first was presentation on TDSP major update, public outreach component, and a community transportation coordinator CTC update. The next TDLCB meeting is scheduled for February 9th, 2023. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bates. At this time, I'm just curious if there are any questions or comments from the board members. I do want to say this is a very interactive meeting, probably the most we've ever had in a long time. But the great thing that was that a representative from Access Links was here to take a lot. And although there have been improvements, there still is a long way to go. Yes, thank you, Mayor Bates. That was a long meeting she held. I want to go ahead and go backwards because we do have Commissioner Amy Lockhart has just arrived. Commissioner Lockhart, we want to congratulate you as a Seminole County Commissioner who was elected as board chair for 2023. And we also like to welcome you to the MetroPlan Orlando board. Commissioner Lockhart, we look forward to working with you on the MetroPlan board. We understand your mother was not feeling this well and we were sending the best for you, but we're glad you were able to join us. So thank you. And I want to go back to the Central Florida MPO Alliance. Commissioner Moore has joined us. So if you have your report, Commissioner
do.
Moore, you're
I
recognized.
do. Good morning, everyone. The Central Florida MPO Alliance met last October 7th. We received updates from FDOT District 5 and Florida's Turnpike Enterprise staff. Our items included approval of the previous minutes, adoption of the 2023 meeting schedule, approval of the proposed revisions to the CFM-POA interlocal agreement. And I have to say, one of the most significant changes approved was to move the election of the Alliance officers from the last meeting of the year to the first meeting of the year in order to allow time for new member appointments. Also, we approved the CFM-POA 2023 list of priority projects for transmission to FDOT. There are also two presentations on the agenda. They include the review of the draft methodology for ranking CFM-POA TISMO projects to be added to the priority list next cycle, and an update on the Regional Transportation Systems Management and Operations Program. The next Alliance meeting is here, February 10th, here at MetroPlan Orlando. And this concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. We appreciate your update. I want to go ahead and recognize some of our outgoing board members. This morning, we say thank you and farewell to 3 MetroPlan board members who have left elected office. None of them are here this morning. However, we still want to acknowledge their service. Orange County Commissioner Siplin served on the MetroPlan board since 2015. She joined the board as an Orange County alternate in 2015 and served in that capacity for 2 years. She became a full-time member to the board in 2017. St. Cloud Council Member Keith Trace was represented the Municipal Advisory Committee since June 2021. And City of Kissimmee Commissioner Jim Fisher served as the alternate voting member in 2017 through 2020. He became the city's primary voting member in early 2021 and has been active since then. He also served on the TDLCB board. So we thank all of them for their service to MetroPlan and their commitment to transportation. I also want some recognition of outgoing committee members. We also have 2 of our committee representatives who will be stepping down from their leadership roles. This is the last meeting for Lee Pullum, who has been the chair of the Technical Advisory Committee, and Ramon Centerens, who has been the chair of the Transportation Systems Management and Operations Committee. Thank you for your service to MetroPlan Orlando, and I see that Mr. Centerens is not here, so.
He's not here yet. We'll try and catch, if he comes in, we'll catch him.
Okay, he gets one of those handy dandy rewards on the way out. Today marks an important staff change at MetroPlan Orlando. Mr. Keith Caskey, Manager of Planning Services, has been a constant presence at our meetings, helping explain the TIP and its amendments and related projects. This is his last meeting with us because he is retiring this month. The staff has prepared a short video tribute for Keith, which we are going to play now. Please join us in wishing Keith a happy retirement.
Long before there was MetroPlan Orlando, there was Keith Caskey. Also known as the man with the plan. Keith has marked more than 40 years in transportation planning in Central Florida. His work helped define how Central Florida transportation grew and evolved. On Keith's watch, we have expanded our transportation options and found new ways to get around the region. Keith has overseen it, and best of all, explained it for us. That's why we also think of him as the man at the podium. At hundreds of public meetings, Keith has been the one explaining our transportation improvement program. He speaks fluent FDOT. Keith is central to everything we do, but he's never one to grab the spotlight. He just stays in the background, getting things done. But today, we are focusing on Keith because he's leaving us. Yes, he's leaving us for a well-deserved retirement. Best wishes, Keith. We'll miss you.
Thank you, Keith, for all of your service. We know you really like that video about yourself because you like to be right in front. So, but that will, congratulations, and we wish you the best on your retirement, or as we call it, the next thing. And at this time, I am going to recognize Mr. Gary Huntman with the Executive Director's announcements.
Good morning, Chairwoman Uribe and board members. I too would like to welcome Commissioner Lockhart to the MetroPlan board, and we will be working with her closely to make sure that she learns the MPO process. I want to welcome also Commissioner Wilson to the MetroPlan board as a board member as opposed to an alternate. So welcome to you as well. And then finally to Mayor Dallas for joining us as the MAC chair. And then congratulations to Jeffrey Campbell for being elected as the chair of the CAC for another year. Congratulations. This morning, we do have Bill Wharton here from Seminole County representing the Technical Advisory Committee in place of Lee Pullum. So thanks, Bill, for being here. We have some special guests who are going to join us online. I believe Ryan Matthews and Angela Drzwecki from Gray Robinson will be joining us later in the agenda for some legislative updates. But we also have Chris Kermode from Gray Robinson here joining us in person. So welcome. We have a new FHWA administrator. We received word of this just the other day. On December 8th, the U.S. Senate voted to confirm Shaylin Batt as the 21st administrator of the FHWA. And he's a well-respected and well-known individual throughout the country. So we look forward to working with him. I've mentioned the MPOAC Institute, and I know that there are some of you that have an interest in that. I had hoped to come today with the actual dates in February and March that will be offered. As of yesterday, they do not have them yet. They're still working on trying to secure hotel sites and so on. But I can tell you that they're still looking at February and March to have it in Orlando and in Tampa. And they're also looking to change the format of it this year. In years past, it had been a commitment of a Friday night, an all-day Saturday, and a Sunday morning. And this year, they are working to compress that into just a single day on a Saturday. So it may be easier for some folks to attend. So I'll give you more information on that as I have it. Even though it's past, it's been 3 months since we've met, but I do want to say something about the WTS Awards Banquet that was held back in October. Sarah Larson of our staff was recognized at that event as the winner of the Innovative Transportation Solutions Award. for her work on our health strategic plan. You've been hearing a lot about that, and there's hardly been a meeting that has gone by this year that I haven't said something about that project. But this award salutes an innovative transportation project that's led by a woman. So congratulations to Sarah for her work and the recognition she has brought to MetroPlan Orlando. Sarah will also be serving as the chapter's secretary in 2023. So she's recently gotten involved, but is very involved in that organization. So we appreciate that. Congratulations also to Lorene Bobo of DOT for receiving the WTS Woman of the Year Award at that same event. Commissioner Castano and I had a tour on Monday of this week at the Skywater facility at Neo City. And while we were there, we went across the street and just dropped in on the high school, and they were gracious enough to give us a tour of that facility as well. And we were led by two very impressive young students. So thank you, Commissioner Castano, for joining me on that, and to Commissioner Grieve for making introductions and making sure that happened. I want to let the board know that Virginia Whittington marked her 25th anniversary as a MetroPlan Orlando employee back on September 29th. So congratulations, Virginia, on that. And I too want to just acknowledge Keith's retirement after 40 years. Now, I first met Keith way back in 1987, and when I first came to Florida, and have known him throughout that length of time. Alex and others on staff have been busy kind of downloading everything in Keith's head over the past several months. But we're prepared and ready for that transition to happen. You have supplemental folders in front of you this morning, and they contain two items. The first that I want to draw your attention to is the section from the board's internal operating procedures that pertain to the election of officers that will come up later on the agenda. And also included is a copy of our annual report. It's very reader friendly this year, as it typically is, and I hope you enjoy it. This year, in the past, we've always included a letter from the chair on some of our accomplishments. This year, we have a link or a QR code that will take you to a video message from the chair, as opposed to having a letter. It's very nicely done, so I hope that you take a look at that and that you enjoy the annual report. Madam Chair, that completes my announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Hutman. Now we want to move on to the FDOT report. We heard he existed and he is back. Secretary Tyler, thank you for joining us.
Thank you and good morning. Madam Chairwoman, thank you for having me back. And I do apologize. I think it's been several months since I was able to join this group. It's been a very busy late summer and fall with multiple hurricanes that have impacted District 5 and drawn our attention in multiple different directions. But nonetheless, we still have been fulfilling our core mission. In that same time of dealing with the hurricanes, we've also managed to complete our updating of our work program, which you're going to hear a presentation on later this morning from our program management administrator, Kathy Alexander. So we're looking forward to that. A lot of great things going on in Central Florida, and there's always challenges with transportation, and we're happy to be part of this great partnership that we all have here, that we're trying to tackle these challenges and improve transportation for our citizens and our visitors. So I do have a few things that I would like to update the board on. I'm going to start off with Wekiva Parkway. 2022 was a big year for the Wekiva Parkway. We've opened up more segments and lane miles of the Wekiva Parkway in 2022 than we have in any other year since we began construction. We've opened up the parkway all the way into Seminole County, what we call Section 6, across the Wekiva River into Seminole County, all the way down to State Road 46. And we've completed the widening from State Road 46 back to I-4. And we have also opened up the I-4 westbound ramp to the Wekiva Parkway. We opened that up in October. And that effectively completes the Beltway around Orlando, at least if you're going in the westbound direction. So we still have the rest of the interchange to open up, and that's our goal for 2023. The remaining movements to and from I-4 and the Wekiva Parkway and going across to 417, those other movements will start coming online in the spring of 2023 and through the summer of 2023. So we are in the final stages of completing the Beltway around Orlando. That was probably, still being discussed as a goal when Mr. Caskey, first started his career. So it's a long project in the making. It's a generational achievement for us all, and we're excited to be moving forward with that. Next, I'll transition over to I-4 Express. We've been very pleased with how I-4 Express has been operating. We opened it up this past February. When I was last here in June, I reported that the traffic on I-4 Express was around 17,000, and that was an average number, which means it's more in the middle and less on the ends, and certainly more traffic during rush hour, which is the point. But that number has steadily increased and grown. This morning I came down from the land in the express lanes, and I started to feel a little bit crowded in there. So the traffic is certainly growing. That's what we anticipated. That's what we intended. Earlier this fall, we eclipsed 23,000. So it may not sound like a lot, but that's 23,000. That's not in those general use lanes, and 25 drivers a week. 25 new drivers a week are choosing to use I-4 Express. So that number is growing. The toll that we have, which was the 50 cents per toll segment introductory rate, still remains in effect. But because of that increase in traffic, we do think that in 2023, by the time we get to the summer, we will be raising that toll. We'll be going to what we call a time of day, a variable toll rate. It won't be that dynamic that you see down in South Florida. We don't think that it's time for that just yet. That'll probably be later in 2023, if not in 2024, but certainly by spring, summer, we will see an increase in that toll rates, at least during the busiest time of the day. And the reason for that is because we want to manage that congestion that's in the express lanes. We want to provide a consistent, reliable product for the folks that choose I-4 Express. And that's the reason for raising that toll rate, so that the people who do choose to take that option, will have some assurance that they'll be able to get to their destination in a consistent amount of time. So we've been very pleased with that. We're also thinking about what's next. The extension of I-4 Express is actually underway as we speak, and that's the extension in the westbound direction from the southern end down into southern Orange County. And that's what we call the westbound express lane 2. And that tube is being built with 3 separate projects. I-4 at Sand Lake Interchange will construct a piece. I-4 at Darrell Carter will construct a piece, and I-4 at State Road 535 will construct a piece. And they will all be connected together. That will provide an express lane all the way down to south of State Road 536 for those folks that want to continue on past the attractions. So Darrell Carter is under construction, 535 is under procurement, and we just had our bid opening for I-4 at Sand Lake earlier this week. So that next phase, that question of what are we doing to expand I-4 Express, we are actually it's underway now for its next expansion. But what's going to be next? Where are we going after this westbound express lane extension? And certainly this board has been asking those questions, and we have been giving you information about our desire to take another look at the corridor, take a value engineering approach, try to figure out how we can make this project incrementally buildable, but also financially feasible in a nearer term than several decades down the road. And so we have completed a lot of those analyses, and we are in the process now of developing a major update that we intend to bring back to this board after the first of the year. We'll go through the committees, the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Municipal Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee, and bring this board an update early next year on what we think we can achieve with the extension of I-4 Express. And I will leave you with a little bit of teaser, something that we've been, thinking about over the last year and observing the traffic patterns, not just every day, but also during holidays and even during the hurricane. With Hurricane Ian, we initiated what we call emergency shoulder usage, which is using our shoulders to facilitate evacuations, starting from Tampa on I-4, bringing folks over from the coast into Central Florida. So we've had many experiences with observing and managing traffic in the Osceola County area of I-4. And we are coming to the conclusion that it may make some sense to, instead of progressively moving south with I-4 Express, that we might need to jump down to Osceola County because of the congestion and the demands that we're seeing on the traffic down there. Now, I'm sure you have lots of questions about how would we do that and why does that make sense? And I'll be glad to come back next year and try to explain it further in detail as to why we think that may be, a good plan for Central Florida. So we are still working on that and we will be back after next year, but I did want to plant that seed in your head. And if you're a driver in Central Florida, which almost all of us are, you're hearing those consistent reports every day of where, congestion is. And it's almost always you hear about I-4 in Osceola County. All times of the day, every holiday, every weekend, it's really becoming an issue that we need to focus on. The final thing that I would like to talk to the board about is a quick safety message. The move over law has been passed in the state of Florida and it's been amended in the state of Florida. The move over law is about protecting the people that protect us out on the highway. So whether you see a red light flashing on the side of the road, or a blue light flashing on the side of the road, or a yellow light flashing on the side of the road, please try to move over. If you can't move over, please try to slow down and please help us all protect those folks that are protecting us as we're traveling and trying to get from our destination to our end destination. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Secretary Tyler. Thanks for a lot of wonderful information. I do want to open up the floor for anyone who would like to comment, ask, inquire. Anyone? Wow. Was very good then. You're good to go then. Thank you. Thank you. Great report. And we look forward to 2023. And we are going to move on to Miss Lisa Smith, who will do our roll call.
Good morning. If you could please say here or present when your name is called and go on mute again after your name has been called. Arrington. Bates. Here. Bonilla. Castano. Here. Gomez Cordero. Here. Demings. Dyer. Here. Dowlis.
Here.
Good. Green. Here. Grebe. Here. Janer. Here. Lockhart. Here. Moore.
Here.
Nelson. Here. Ortiz. Uribe.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Woodruff.
Here.
Zembauer.
Here.
Madam Chair, that concludes the roll call and we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Miss Lisa. We're going to move on to the agenda review. Mr. Hutman, you're
Yeah.
recognized.
Thank you, Chairwoman Uribe. I want to call attention to an item on the consent agenda. And I talked with some of you about it. The schedule for 2023 that we have, and we're asking for your approval, includes starting our July meeting at 8 o'clock rather than at 9 o'clock, so that we can accommodate some budget hearings. If there needs to be any discussion on that, then I'd ask that someone pull it from the agenda. Otherwise, I just wanted to make sure that everyone got it correctly on their calendars. And then the other item, which is a change to the agenda, is presentation item 12C is being removed from the agenda. It's a non-action item. So I just decided to be more respectful of your time and pull that from the agenda. So we will not be having that third presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hutman. And we also wanted to note on the July 8th meeting at 8 a.m., it will be a rather short meeting.
Yes, that's correct. We will structure, it's really, the July meeting is, We consider it really our most important meeting of the year because of the approvals that take place. We've had some issues the last couple of years. We've tried moving it, having it earlier. It conflicts with the July 4th holiday. Moving it later creates a hardship for DOT and for FHWA. So it turns out that keeping it on the same date, but changing the time a little bit, and Byron Brooks from Orange County was very workable. So I appreciate the help that everyone gave me on that. A fairly simple change, but it does require getting here earlier that day. And so I just want board members to be aware.
Thank you, Mr. Hetman. We're going to move on to committee reports. At this time, the Municipal Advisory Committee, Mayor John Dallas, you're recognized.
Good morning. Thank you. Since the last board meeting, the Municipal Advisory Committee met on November 2nd and December 8th here in the boardroom. We approved our September and November meeting minutes and the max 2023 meeting schedule. We also recommended approval of the amendments to the Transportation Improvement Program and plan revisions to the 2045 MTP that are on our agenda today. During our last two meetings, we received informational presentations on MetroPlan Orlando's active transportation plan that just kicked off. We learned about the recommendations from Rock Springs Road and West Orange Trail studies, and we also heard from FDOT and Florida's Turnpike Enterprise on the tentative 5-year work program. The MAC meets next on February 2nd, 2023. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor Dallas. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the Community Advisory Committee. Mr. Jeffrey Campbell, you're recognized.
Thank you and good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. The Community Advisory Committee met on December 7th for our last meeting of the year. The committee re-elected Dr. Dan Stevens as vice chair, and as mentioned, I will remain as chair for 2023. So I will continue representing the committee at these meetings for the next year. The committee also recommended approval for the TIP and the MTP amendments that are on the agenda for today. We heard a presentation on Rock Springs Road and West Orange Trail extension studies. Members expressed some concern about the possible environmental impacts and trail access. Members also had several questions related to the FDOT 5-year work program, including requesting some additional information on funding multimodal projects and requesting more information about maintenance programs. At its October meeting, the CAC welcomed 2 new members representing Seminole County and the city of Orlando. The committee heard a presentation on MetroPlan Orlando's new active transportation plan and participated in a workshop activity providing feedback on maps for the 3 counties. The next CAC meeting will be January 25th, 2023. Madam Chair, this completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Do we have any questions or comments from Mr. Campbell? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the Technical Advisory Committee. Mr. Bill Wharton, you are recognized. Want to hit your
Advisory.
microphone button so we can hear. Perfect.
Thank you. We have a couple of technical advisory committee meetings to catch up on. The TAC met on October 28th of this year, and the committee reviewed and approved meeting minutes from our August 26th meeting, the appointment of committee members to the Officer Selection Subcommittee for the 2023 term, and the 2023 TAC meeting schedule with the change to the May meeting from May 26th to May 19th. The committee heard a presentation on the active transportation plan. After the TAC meeting was adjourned, committee members attended a workshop on the plan presented by MetroPlan. The Technical Advisory Committee did not meet in November. And the TAC last meeting of this year was December 2nd. We heard presentations on the latest status on the Rock Springs Road and West Orange Trail projects out in the Apopka area. Presentation on the FY 2024 through 2028 tentative 5-year work program that included FDOT District 5 projects, as well as the projects from the Florida Turnpike Enterprise. For our action items, the committee voted to recommend the board approval of the requested FDOT to amend the Transportation Improvement Plan to include 3 transit projects for links that include an upgrade to the limo system, to purchase electric buses and electric neighbor-linked vehicles, along with additional charging facilities, and to recommend approval of the request by the MetroPlan Orlando staff to amend the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan to include fully funded transportation improvement program projects, incorporated new federal revenues and discretionary funding grants and other miscellaneous changes based on the local agency feedback. And as of that time of the year, the TAC elected myself, Bill Wharton from Seminole County, as the next TAC chairman, and elected Josh Gervais from Osceola County to serve as a TAC vice chair for 2023. We'd also like to thank Lee Pullman with the Reed Creek Improvement District for her services as the chair for 2022. And the TAC will meet again on January 27th of the new year. And finally, I believe I speak for everyone in the Technical Advisory Committee in wishing Keith Caskey a very enjoyable retirement. And Madam Chair, there's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Wharton. At this time, are there any questions or comments for Mr. Wharton? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the Transportation Systems Management and Operations Committee. Mr. Centerins, you are recognized.
Good morning, Madam Chair
Good morning.
and members of the board. Apologize for my tardiness this morning, but I did take advantage of that 50-cent express lane this morning. So So the TISMO Operations Advisory Committee met on December 2nd. The following items were approved. Minutes for the October 28th TISMO meeting. We approved staff recommendation to amend the fiscal year 22-23 through 26-27 TIP to include upgrade of limo system, additional bus and bus facilities and transit-oriented development planning for State Road 436. We approved staff recommendation that the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan be modified, amended to include fully funded TIP projects in the existing plus committed network, incorporating new federal revenues and discretionary funding grants within region and other miscellaneous changes based on local agency feedback. Lastly, we approved recommendation from the officer selection subcommittee for the nomination of Mr. Shad Smith, City of Longwood, to serve as the TISMO chairman, and for nomination of Mr. Brian Sanders, Orange County, as TISMO vice chair for 2023. We had a presentation on the MetroPlan Orlando TISMO master plan by Mr. Eric Hill. And the next TISMO meeting will be held on January 27th at 8:30 a.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Does
Thank you.
anyone have a question or comment for Mr. Centerins? Well, I do want to thank you for your service. You were a little late and we have a little award for you that if you don't mind coming on up, I would love to present you. Okay, at this time, we're going to move to public comment on action items. These are just comments related to action items. Anything related to the general nature, we'll have an opportunity at the end. I want to ask Ms. Smith if we have any cards for public comment at this time.
I have not received any.
And do we know if we have any online?
I don't see any hands raised online either.
Okay, fantastic. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Hutman, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, I would just ask for approval of consent agenda unless anyone feels the need to discuss any particular item.
So do we have someone who will file a motion?
So moved.
Okay, who? So is that
Zembauer.
Commissioner Moore? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Gomez Cordero with a motion and a second by Commissioner Zembauer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The action passes unanimously. We're going to move on to other action items. And we're going to start with the approval of amendments to the FY 2022-23 to 26-27 TIP, which goes in synonymous with Mr. Keith Caskey. And Mr. Caskey, you are recognized.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. Just wanted to say I've really enjoyed working with this board and our committees and especially our staff over all these years. So thank you again. And this morning, we have a TIP amendment request that involves 3 transit projects. This includes some additional funding for Lynx's existing limo upgrade project. Then there's a new project for Lynx to purchase 20 electric buses and 5 electric NeighborLink vehicles. And then they're putting in some additional charging stations. And then there is a new planning study that Lynx is doing along with the city of Orlando to locate bus rapid transit stations and transit-oriented development along State Road 436, just north of Orlando International Airport. And you all have the information on this in tab 2 in your packets. So with that, unless there's any questions, we're asking for your approval of the amendment.
Do we have any questions or comments? Anyone on the board? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. So Ms. Smith, you have the floor.
I need a motion first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
So I would have a motion from Commissioner Zimbauer and a second from Commissioner Moore. And now we have the ability for a roll call. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Castano. Gomez Cordero. Demmings,
Yes.
Dallas. Good. Green.
Yes.
Grieve,
Yes.
Janer,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Ortiz. Uribe.
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Woodruff.
Yes.
Zimbauer.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Caskey again. And we are going to move now to the approval of amendments to the 2045 MetroPlan Transportation Plan. Mr. Alex Trager from MetroPlan Orlando staff, you have the floor.
Good morning, board members, Madam Chair, and I'm here to present to you some proposed plan revisions to the 2045 plan. When we adopted the plan about 2 years ago, we told you it was going to be a living plan. We were going to come back and revisit the plan throughout the life of it to make sure it was still relevant in keeping with its planning consistency. So today we have a handful of plan revisions, some modifications, some amendments. So there are some differences between these two, but I think what's important to note is MetroPlan Orlando treats modification and amendments equally as it relates to public participation, as it relates to bringing these items for your approval today. So you're going to hear those terms, but as it relates to what we've done as staff to engage the public and to bring it for your action today, we treat everything as an amendment. So we have six that made the binder, and then we had one additional one, which I'll talk about a little later on, that came out of our Systems Management Advisory Committee a couple of weeks ago. But the first is a modification, and as it's in all these, its information is actually found in tab 3 of your agenda packets with a detailed supplemental overview there. But the first one is a tip refresh. Every year per federal FHWA guidance, we have to show the tip snapshot in the adopted MTP in our budget tables. So we take what's after the roll forward, the August-September round, and we include those projects through 2026 to be the first 5 years of our long-range plan. In incorporating all those, there were no impacts to the long-range plan's cost feasibility, really an administrative item in nature. The second is an amendment, and it's a good news item. And some of this is what you've already heard in the news with the IIJA, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Our region has received new federal funds, both the traditional SU funds that we receive as an urbanized area, but we've also received carbon reduction funds. Over the lifetime of the plan, from 26 to 45, it totals about $55 million. So about $2 extra million a year of SU funds, about $4 or $5 million extra a year in those carbon reduction funds. We've followed the board's policy and divided those consistent with the SU allocation policy and are taking those new funds and putting them equally to bike and pedestrian projects, systems management and operations projects, and as well as complete streets projects. So it's consistent with your policy. In doing so, 11 new projects, 5 complete streets projects, and 6 bicycle and pedestrian projects are now cost feasible that were previously not cost feasible based on the prior revenues. We didn't change any priorities. We just added new funds to the top of the ledger for planning consistency purposes. The third is another good news item, but not really news to you. An amendment here, we're incorporating those federal discretionary grants that our region and that our local partners have received. So you'll see the city of Orlando, the Chrissy grant for the Sunshine Corridor, and as well Orange County's, the local alternative mobility network. That's really what's happening out at Lake Nona with BEEP, but we're incorporating those for the purposes of planning consistency. The fourth is an amendment raised by Central Florida Expressway Authority and Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. And they're adjusting these projects to be consistent and to better represent the implementation and operation of the project. So we've split them, and the segments that are going to be implemented by the Central Florida Expressway Authority and the Turnpike are now better defined per those plans. And the Fifth Amendment is a companion to the Point Siena Parkway project. This is going to be the County Road 532 is going to be actually advanced by the Central Florida Expressway Authority as part of Point Siena Parkway. The sixth is kind of a catch-all, a lot of miscellaneous items that were raised by our local partner agencies and state agencies since the plan or since our last amendment cycle took place. If I could summarize them all kind of in a nutshell, we updated some project descriptions to include safety improvements to kind of better define what's actually going to take place in the projects. We also changed project limits in some cases. And when you change project limits, sometimes that changes length, and then we change length, that obviously changes cost in our long range estimates. So there's some amendments relating to that, but all of them consistent with our local partners' request. And many of the other modifications, we were being consistent with local names, state names, and state road designations. As you know, some roads carry multiple local names, multiple state designations, and we want to make sure all of that is kind of clean and clear in all of our documents. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about which priorities and which progress or which segments that we're referencing. And then the last one came out of as a request from our systems management and operations subcommittee, and it actually relates back to the Point Siena Parkway project. In that project being advanced, it no longer needs to be on the Osceola County list. So we're removing that as a duplicate project. MetroPlan Orlando's staff agrees, and all of our advisory committees. TSMA was the first advisory committee to take action, so we were able to include this request through all of our advisory committees, administrative in nature, but certainly important to call to your attention. Again, recommended for approval by all committees. We did not receive any public comments on this. Again, we went through our traditional process of posting and soliciting feedback, but we did not receive any. So with that, we are requesting your approval as to the 2045 plan as presented. And Madam Chair, this is a roll call vote, but if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor. At this time, I wanted to see if there's any questions or comments from anyone on the board or any point of clarification. Okay, seeing none.
Chair,
we will
move
need
to
a mo-
approve plan revisions to 2045 MTP as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner Gomez Cordero. And Ms. Smith, you are now set for roll call.
Bates,
Yes.
Castano, Gomez Cordero, Demmings,
Yes.
Dowless,
Yes.
Good, Green, Grebe,
Yes.
Janer,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Nelson, Uribe,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Woodruff,
Yes.
Zimbauer.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We're going to move on to our next action item, which is the approval of the 2023 legislative priorities. And we're going to recognize Miss Virginia Whittington. By the way, congratulations on your years of service to MetroPlan. And you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Before I get started, I want to recognize that we are being joined this morning online by Mr. Brian Matthews and Angela Dreswicki, who are going to greet you and give some remarks after your approval of or after the action that you take on this next item. And also, as Gary mentioned, in the audience with us today, who literally has my back, is Mr. Chris Carmody, who is also with the Gray Robinson team. In your agenda or books at tab 4 are the priorities that we are proposing for the 2023 legislative session. These have been reviewed with each of the executive committee members. We took time to spend time with each one of them to get feedback. Much of what you see has been refreshed from previous years and most recently last year, as there has not been a lot of movement in this area, but we do believe that it's important to keep the issues in front of our legislative delegation. And so what you have before you, the bulk of which again are carryovers. We did remove the item from last year's agenda having to do with the bicycle and pedestrian issue with having bicyclists included as a vulnerable road user, because that has been accomplished. And so we've added a broad top priority for safety in any funding that we may be able to secure that would allow us to implement initiatives or programs that seek to further enhance safety for the traveling public. Your next top priority has to do with seeking increased funding that does not negatively impact the Transportation Trust Fund. And what does that mean? That means that funds that are coming down, such as the IIJA, that there's not a in on the right side and out on the left side to take away funds from the Transportation Trust Fund. So we want it to continue to be an increase. And lastly, regarding the increased funding for transportation disadvantaged or paratransit service, we're proposing once again to support a legislative budget request of $10 million that's being advanced by the Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged. And this is not new money. They're seeking budgetary authority to use money that is already existing in the Transportation Disadvantaged Trust Fund. Their request is the same as it was last year with a slight modification. 4 million of the 10 million is being requested as recurring and would be used to fund the Trip and Equipment Grant program, which is available to all 67 counties. And the remaining 6 million would be used for an innovative service development grant that Links and others would be able to apply for. The 3 legislative items that you have on your positions have been positions that you've already taken before, and they're carryovers, and the 2 listed as those that we would monitor are those that we would continue to keep our eyes on. If anything happens, we will come back to you. And in the event that something happens that is critical or that needs your immediate attention, we will convene with your approval, the executive committee, to address those items and then come back to the full board with a report. And we do have plans to visit Tallahassee in April. And so we're looking forward to being able to, at a minimum, have our board officers to go up and join us and hopefully be able to take the time to meet with our legislative delegation members. And at this time, I would request your support for your legislative priorities.
Thank you, Ms. Virginia. Do we need to recognize Ryan at this time? Does he want to add anything?
After your adoption, he's going to do his read of the tea leaves and let you all know what to expect in Tallahassee this next session. So,
Madam Chair, motion to approve.
Well, I was going to ask first if there was any questions or comments from anyone on the floor. Okay, seeing none, we have a motion from
Second.
Commissioner Janer, a second from Commissioner Zimbauer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. And now Ryan Matthews with Gray Robinson and Angela Dreswicki will have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me before I ramble on.
We hear you, Ryan.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thrilled to be with you again, albeit virtually this time. As Virginia had mentioned, one of the most important aspects of this morning was introducing you all to 2 new members of our team with Gray Robinson, Chris Carmody, who is joining you this morning there in the front row, as well as Katie Fleury, who is online with Angela and I. Chris and Katie have spent years in the political process, are both local in Orlando. And so Angela and I were thrilled to welcome them to the team as we continue our representation of MetroPlan. We feel, again, having folks that are in the Orlando area on a consistent and everyday basis will be beneficial. I know most of you likely have interacted with both Chris and Katie in the past. So again, we're thrilled to continue to represent MetroPlan, and this was one of the reasons Angela and I were most excited in joining Gray Robinson, were the additional resources and just top-notch talent that already existed at the firm. So let's talk a little bit about where we stand today. Today, we're actually in special session in Tallahassee, and we were convened in order to mainly address a crumbling and/or crisis in the property insurance market. Obviously, that was exacerbated by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole most recently. So the legislature convened in a 3-day special session. Quite frankly, that was largely predetermined and will end today as the House will gavel out after they vote on 3 bills. One of those bills that you should be aware of is a new program as it relates to the Florida Turnpike enterprise. The governor had discussed a couple weeks ago, and the legislature has now implemented a $500 million appropriation through the Florida Turnpike enterprise for those who utilize the turnpike or other toll facilities more than 35 times in a month. You would effectively receive a 50% reduction in the fees paid. And again, that comes with a $500 million appropriation, so those enterprises or toll facilities can repay bonds that were taken out previously. It is a 1-year program, so it will become effective January 1st, 2023, and will end December 31st, 2023. So that is sort of the main issue for this board's consideration that, again, will be passed today. The property insurance bills passed the Senate, as did the toll relief bills passed the Senate yesterday. So the Senate has since left Tallahassee. Now, to talk a little bit more broadly, as we move closer to the start of the 2023 legislative session, which will begin in March, the rumors around Tallahassee is that this will not be the only special session we have, much to your legislative representative's chagrin. There have been multiple conversations because of the legislature's affinity for the governor, because of the governor's sort of position in national politics. I think you're going to see a legislature that is willing to bolster him for 2024 to the highest extent possible. So we have heard whispers of special sessions regarding constitutional carry, regarding social issues such as abortion. We have an extremely dominated Republican legislature after November elections. We have supermajorities in both the House and the Senate by Republicans, which leaves Democrats very little room to maneuver, thereby having a supermajority in both chambers. Republicans are allowed to waive the rules that they have implemented themselves and really kind of run roughshod, quite frankly, from a policy perspective for the next 2 years. So I think we're going to see a lot of those social issues that we've debated in the past remain in the limelight and probably, take up a significant portion of our legislative time. Now, prior to the start of that March session, we've got 6 committee weeks, legislative committee weeks that will occur. And so I want to talk a little bit about as new leadership has come into both the House and Senate. In the House, we have newly elected Speaker Paul Renner from Palm Coast. In the Senate, we have Senate President Kathleen Passidomo from Naples. With each 2-year term, obviously new leadership comes in, new committee structures are formed, new members are placed on committees. So let's talk about Central Florida representation on transportation committees. In the Senate, we have a standalone transportation committee. We have 1 member from the region, and that's Senator Vic Torres. In the House, they have a newly formed Transportation and Modals Committee that is chaired by Representative Fiona McFarland down in Sarasota. But that committee, quite frankly, from a Central Florida perspective, is much better represented. We have Representative Arrington, Representative Escamani, newly elected Representative Harris, Stark, and Bankson all sit on that new House Transportation and Modals Committee. So your team, over the course of the next couple weeks, will be meeting with those folks to discuss MetroPlan's priorities and some of the work that you do. Angela and I have also had the good fortune yesterday of meeting with Secretary Perdue. We will continue to discuss from a financial and budget perspective those legislative priorities that you all have just adopted as it relates to bicycle and pedestrian safety, to transportation disadvantaged. If you recall, last year, really in the waning days of session, we had some significant disagreements between the House and Senate in terms of how much money they were willing to appropriate to transportation disadvantage program. And through advocacy of board members and others, we were able to at least come to a place that was not harmful, as harmful as it could have been, quite frankly. And so we will continue to do that this year. Angela and I also met with Mark Reichert from MPOAC. We have volunteered basically our full advocacy assistance through MPOAC as Mark continues to understand his role and to how effectively he can quote unquote lobby the legislature with his current position. So we'll be working very closely with MPOAC. The last thing that I will say before I just turn it over back to Virginia, or if Chris or Angela or Katie want to say anything in closing, we very much look forward to you coming to Tallahassee in April. I do think it's an important step in sort of tool in the toolbox from an advocacy perspective, particularly because we've got 35 new members of the House of Representatives. Even though they are largely Republican in nature, it's still an important educational effort to undertake when you have that significant of numbers who are newly elected and really are kind of finding their, the first 6 months is simply trying to find a bathroom in Tallahassee. So it's incumbent upon us, and we really would, encourage you all to engage with those new members in both the House and Senate, so you can educate them on your priorities as we move closer to 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. We really appreciate the reality of the update that's going on in Tallahassee. At this time, I wanted to open up the floor. Any comments or questions from Mr. Matthews or Ms. Whittington? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your time. And like I said, for the update, have a great holiday. And Ms. Whittington, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, in closing, I just wanted to put a comma to the importance of the trip that you're going to be taking to go to Tallahassee, but also to inform the board that we had a very successful virtual open house a year ago with our legislative delegation. And so we will be repeating that. We'll have staff to invite members of the legislative delegation or their aides or their staff to drop in and meet our staff when we can present our legislative priorities to them.
Do we have a date? You just said April. Was there a specific date?
The Tallahassee date is April 4th is the date that we're looking at. So it will be an April 4th, 5th. And we're still looking for dates for the virtual drop-ins.
Thank you, Ms. Whittington. And we'd be remiss if we didn't, this is a measure that I really fought for, and Commissioner Delary, and I'm glad that we're going to head up there and put a face to what, Orlando MetroPlan is, so we can be more successful and continue our communications. So thank you very much. And that was excellent. We are going to move on to the election of board officers for 2023. Mr. J. Small, you are recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman Aribi. I'm going to go about this a little bit differently because we have a vacancy, and I want to take just a couple of moments to give the board a background on how the election of officers has traditionally taken place and what our policies and procedures are. Unlike some governmental entities, the legislature has not delegated to MetroPlan rulemaking authority under the Florida Administrative Procedures Act. Consequently, for years, MetroPlan has operated and conducted its business under written internal operating procedures. And these are not laws, they're not regulations, they don't have the force of law or regulation. They're more in the nature of policies. I deal with a lot of governmental entities that have right-of-way policies and procedures acts. Those are not having the force of law, they are policies, guidance documents. And because of the unique circumstances that we have with the vacancy, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to go a little bit more in depth of the background procedures and the operating procedures. In the board's supplemental package, you have an excerpt of section 4 of the internal operating procedures, which relates to the election of officers. And I know that it's in the board package. What I'd like to do for just a couple of moments is focus on subparagraphs 3 and 4. And subparagraph 3 provides that each member who's elected shall serve for a 1-year period until he or she is reelected or until his or her successor is elected. The chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary treasurer's terms of office shall be limited to 2 consecutive 1-year terms. And none of those officers are eligible for reelection until after an additional 2 years have elapsed. And typically what has happened is that at the last meeting, there's been a progression of officers. You have that information in your board package. Secretary treasurer moves to vice chair, chair rotated off, vice chair moves to chair, and then there's another person who's elected to the secretary treasurer position. We're not able to do that because of the vacancies that now sit with the vice chair. And as an internal operating procedure, we've got some flexibility to deal with this contingency in subsection 4. And subsection 4 provides that newly elected officers shall be declared installed and shall assume the duties of office at the first scheduled meeting of the new calendar year. And here is the germane language, or as designated by the board. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, if you will, in when an officer is declared installed and assumes his or her duties of office. Normally, the procedure that the board has followed since 2007 is that there would be a nomination for the current vice chairman to move up to the chair position for the next year. That would be followed by a nomination for the current secretary treasurer to become vice chairman, then a nomination for a new secretary treasurer. This year, as I've noted, we have a vacancy in the vice chairman position, and I'm not comfortable in having even a 30-day period of time when that office is not filled by one of the board members. In debating or discussing or figuring out what's the best path forward, Mr. Hutman and I have had a number of discussions over the past couple of weeks. I know that he may have briefed some of the board members, and there's 2 alternatives I've discussed with Mr. Hutman, either of which I think is going to be workable. And each of these would allow Seminole County to have an elected official moving into the secretary treasurer position, and that individual working his or her way up the leadership ladder, gaining the institutional knowledge and experience that's important in the vice chair and chair positions of MetroPlan. So let me discuss 2 alternatives and make a recommendation to the board as to which these alternatives may be the most advantageous. The first alternative would be for Chairwoman Uribe to serve a second term, followed as allowed in the internal operating procedures. This would be followed by a motion, traditionally following the course for Commissioner Grebe, who's the current secretary treasurer, to move in the position of the vice chair. just as she would have anticipated under the current organizational structure. The third would be another motion for a Seminole County representative to assume the Secretary Treasurer's position. And this would reset the officers in the traditional rotation that's been in place since 2007. The second alternative is for the current Secretary Treasurer to move directly to the chair's position, to be followed by a nomination for an elected official from Orange County, maybe Commissioner Uribe to come back as vice chairman, and again, another nomination by an elected official from Seminole County to serve as the Secretary Treasurer. Irrespective of these alternatives, I recommend that whatever route the board pursues, that in the motions, it be clear in the record that there's a designation that the elected official will be installed and assume his or her role as an officer at the conclusion of this meeting. That way we don't have a gap in the position of vice chairman. We have an orderly path of transition. As I've indicated and walked through for the board and with Mr. Huttman, the internal operating procedures are certainly flexible enough to accommodate that. So I have always been very careful with the board, and I know that when Chairwoman Uribe took the position of chair, I met with her and said, I do not make policy decisions. I'm not an elected official, and I'm very cautious about staying in my wheelhouse. Nevertheless, and this is not a policy decision, I see distinct advantages in pursuing the first option. It assures the board's continuity of officers. This is not an easy board. There's learning curve, and each position as an elected official provides a foundation for that individual to grow into the next position. I think that the first alternative promotes what I would call institutional experience and preserves a degree of institutional history. And then it resets the historic rotation of officers that's been in place since 2007. So with those preliminary statements, and at the risk of going outside of my wheelhouse, my recommendation to the board is that the first alternative that I've discussed is the one that I think is the smoothest logistically and institutionally. Those conclude my preliminary comments. If there are any questions about my thought process on these alternatives, I'm certainly happy to entertain them. If not, then the normal practice would be, and these are the election of officers, I just want to remind everybody for the record, is not a roll call vote. Our first action would be having a motion, if we follow the first alternative, to recommend Commissioner Uribe to serve as chair for a second year. And in that motion, I would request that it be clear that that motion includes language that she is deemed, or the chair is deemed installed and shall assume the duties of the office at the conclusion of this meeting, so there is no gap. So that's, I'm going to leave it up to the board in case there's a motion in that regard, or
I will make a motion.
It's fine. I hit the button. I said, okay. Yeah, option one, I want a motion. If you're willing to stay another term. Okay. And Cheryl, you.
yeah, we have a motion from Commissioner Cordero. We'd need a second.
Yeah.
Second, Wilson.
And that was
And-
to include that she would
be installed at the end of this meeting. Correct? So there's no
Yes.
gap.
Consistent with section 4, subparagraph 3 of our internal operating procedures. Thank you. What he
Yes.
said. There's a line like that from the office, but I think it goes the other way. So we have a motion and a second. Commissioner, are you willing to serve in the role for a second year?
Thank you very much. I would be honored to serve for an additional year in this role. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any further nominations besides our current chairwoman? Can I have a motion to close the nominations? And we have a vote on that to close the nominations?
We can motion, I mean, if I did a motion, I can do it too.
This is just to
Close?
close the nomination.
That's what
So
I'm saying.
second on that motion.
Okay.
To close the nominations.
Yes,
We
second.
have a second. Just need a voice vote on that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Opposed.
All in, thank you. And now we'll go to the main motion. All in favor of the recommendation that Commissioner Rebe remain as chair for a second year. Can we have a voice vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record reflect that that motion passes. Congratulations. Our second motion, I presume, would be following the first alternative I laid out, is for there to be a motion to recommend that Commissioner Grebe serve as the board's vice chair.
So second. So moved by Mr. Good.
Yeah.
I'll
And-
second it.
And for the record, I presume that that is to be effective at the end of this meeting, consistent with the prior vote.
Yes. Any other, do you run this, Che?
Pardon?
You run any other nominations?
I'm getting to that. I'm taking my notes now. Thank you. Are there any other nominations? If not, I take a motion to close the nominations. Voice vote on that?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, all in favor of the recommendation that Commissioner Grebe serve as the board's vice chair effective at the conclusion of this meeting. Can I hear a roll call vote?
Yes. Aye.
I'm sorry, I apologize, a voice vote.
Oh,
I
okay.
apologize, voice
Aye.
vote. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Congratulations, you're serving as vice chair. And our final action would be to recommend a elected official from Seminole County to be representative on the board in the office of Secretary Treasurer.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Jason Bauer for that position.
Second, you Rebe.
I'm sorry.
Second, you Rebe.
And again, that motion would be, so the record is clear, to be installed and to assume the duties of that office at the conclusion of this meeting. I have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Can I have a motion and a second to close the nominations?
Motion to close nominations.
Second one.
Voice vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, can I have a voice vote in favor of the recommendation that Commissioner Zambauer serve as the board's secretary treasurer effective at the conclusion of this meeting?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Congratulations, sir. Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, I have no further comments. These conclude the election of officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Small. We are going to move on to information items for acknowledgement. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Zimbauer, a second by Commissioner Gomez Cordero. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? We're going to move on to other business representatives. At this time, we're going to have a presentation of the FDOT District 5 and FTE Draft Work Program. And we have Miss Catherine Alexander. Miss Alexander, you're recognized.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here to present and highlight some of our projects that we have in our tentative work program. So our tentative work program is a 5-year plan of projects and activities that we have planned for the upcoming 5 fiscal years. Our fiscal year begins July 1st and runs through June 30th. And we're talking about fiscal years 24 through 28 with this tentative work program. Projects that are included in our work program are public transit, spaceport, seaport, airport, and rail projects. And they include the activities of transportation planning, transportation systems management operations, engineering design, construction, and maintenance as well. FDOT is not the lead agency on some of these projects, but the funding does funnel through the DOT. So that is why they are represented in their work program. Each district builds their tentative work program based on the priorities for the region, as well as through collaboration through our local partners, our metropolitan transportation planning organizations. And each district then submits this to central office in the January timeframe, where all of the district tentative work programs are then compiled to be the statewide tentative work program. That then goes through several reviews, fiduciary, as well as adherence reviews. It also gets presented to legislator for budget and funding. It also goes to the Transportation Commission Board for review. And then ultimately it should get adopted by the governor come July 1st. The last couple of years, FDOT has done a really great job of combining all of the work program public hearings for the districts across the state into one platform. That's the link that you see there for the work program public hearing website. I invite individuals to go out there to review the information. There's a lot of good resource information as to how we build the program, how the projects get put together, as well as all of the information for the programming for District 5, not only in PDF format, but also in a GIS mapping. So it's really easy to navigate and see where the projects are located. Some important key dates to take note that you'll see here is we have our public comment deadline, December 23rd, in the next few weeks, next week actually. We have the Florida Transportation Commission public hearing, March 6th. Central office will submit the tentative work program to the executive office to the governor March 21st. And then we have legislation that begins March 7th and runs through then May 5th, where the plan will be reviewed. And again, ultimately for adoption July 1st of next year. Fiscal year 22, well, the calendar year as well as the fiscal year has been interesting. We're now currently working in 23, but we have seen significant cost variability on our projects. So you can see in general, we're seeing about 24% cost increases. We're seeing cost increases for material and labor shortages, premium pricing on certain materials, particular electrical, steel. We're also seeing augmented unknowns that are included in our project costs that are also raising those prices. We have seen over the last year limited competition with single bid responses to some of our projects, which has really cost us to go back and see what we can do, not only to increase competition, but maybe to try to put some projects out for some greater benefit cost, combining them with other projects. We've had to reject a few of those single bids because of the cost being so high on some of those projects. It has also made it really challenging to manage our contingency for the year. We have really been conservative with an increase of 24% and a contingency about 10%. There's obviously a shortfall there. So we have really been mindful and conscientious on managing what we have available for the current year, as well as how do we project and forecast what these variable cost implications are as we're building our tentative work program. So that has also been a challenge that we faced at the department as we put the plan together. Also taking into account a real estate cost increases about 15% for here in the region, along with what we have seen inflationary costs for material and labor. That compounds some of the cost increases in the right of way as well. And as you can see, 15% increase for land prices has also impacted what's included in our work program. Our tentative work program is supported by federal and state funding allocations, as well as revenue projections. Luckily, this year definitely was much better than what we have seen in the past. However, we're offset by the cost increases and the inflation that we have seen for a lot of our material supply chain issues, as well as limited competition. We have also had program updates that have taken place in this cycle. Resurfacing, maintaining our pavement is a key component of our work program, and we did have increases to our lane miles for resurfacing as well as allocations that affected what we received for that funding. Another change that occurred for this work program was the projections for revenue and surcharge that came out of the revenue estimating conference through the summer. They were adjusted. They were actually lowered and made more conservative for the first couple of years because of the current economic condition that we're facing. In 2021, we had the bipartisan infrastructure law, also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that did inject some formula funding into FDOT. We received an additional $3.5 billion, and that was across the board for FDOT. There was also new formula programs that were presented. Alex mentioned some of this, that carbon reduction. Some of these are for environmental improvement projects, as well as resiliency and climate improvement projects, as well as public safety with the bridge repair funding. So we do have additional funding for projects that target those program areas as well. That's federal. And then there's also the opportunity for federal competitive grant applications that will be taken through the next couple of years through the Infrastructure Act. So as we're balancing the program, taking all this into account, there's a priority that we take place as we're going through and identifying and trying to put everything together and balance out the 5-year plan. We consider the project commitments and cost increases we have seen over the last year. We try to leverage all the fund sources available. That includes anything from the partners, from our MPOs, TPOs, as well as the new programs that are available. We have been able to apply that to several of the projects to be able to include and offset some of those increases with that. We also assess what the district needs are. We have a considerable amount of district-wide and continuing services that work within the district that support delivery of the work program as well. So that is taken into consideration. Limited new projects because of this trying to balance the cost increases and supply chain issues and challenges with the new funding and additional funding. So we have safety and maintenance preservation projects is what we looked at if we could add anything. And of course, I think most importantly, what we do try to do is minimize any kind of project impacts in our work program. We try to avoid any deletions or deferrals as to the extent possible. 5-year totals, you can see for the counties of Orange, Osceola, and Seminole, we're talking about close to $1.7 billion. And here's a breakdown for each of those years. This amount of funding is represented in various project types. And here you see you have safety, capacity, preservation, multimodal operations, bike ped improvements, and miscellaneous. Miscellaneous, this could be a catch-all. This could be drainage improvements. It could be culvert repairs. It could be other items that are not represented in the most significant work mixes that you see above. Priority projects, we have 18 projects that are represented in an attentive 5-year program for almost close to $250 million. I'm going to go ahead and highlight some key projects additions that were included in our tentative work program for this fiscal years 24 through 28, like I mentioned. Again, the website does have all the programming, so this is just new things that we have covered that we'll be covering today. I'm going to start off with Orange County. We have several wrong-way detection projects that will be going in place along I-4. This is from Sand Lake to Seminole County line, and then from Osceola Polk County line from 482. This would be construction is funded in 24. We have a resurfacing project on the left-hand side. Design is funded in fiscal year 23 and construction in 26. This is for resurfacing of State Road 436 from 441 to the Seminole County line. On the right-hand side, you see State Road 50 on the east side of Orlando. This is from Chuliota Road to 520. It's a widening project. Construction is funded in 2028. The two projects that you see here, we have a road safety project and then a resurfacing project. On the left-hand side, we have State Road 438 from Lake Stanley Road to Hiawassee Roads. Again, it's a safety project. Design is in 25. Construction is in 27. $5.5 million funded in the work program for that. And on the right-hand side, you see State Road 426. It's a resurfacing project from Park Avenue to Lakemont Avenue. Design is in 24, construction in 26, a little over $11 million. These next two projects are projects that are being delivered through what's known as a LAP. It's a local agency projects. We have the Shingle Creek Trail. This is a bike path trail. The front design on that is in 26 with construction in 28. $5.5 million that's programmed for this within the tentative. And then we have an intersection improvement project. Construction is funded in that first year of the tentative for University Boulevard, Indian Road, over $5 million for that. And last, we have a project, Orange County Gap Segment 2 Bike Path Trail from Hiawassee Road to north of State Road 414. That has construction funded in fiscal year 26, a little over $9 million there. Moving on to Osceola. We have intersection improvements, US 1792 at Pleasant Hill Road. Right-of-way funding is included in our tentative for the fiscal within the years of 25 to 26. Construction is in 27. I will note that this is a new sequence number. It's a -6. The project still remains in the tentative. You'll notice later on that that segment number was deleted. It was replaced with this -6, but the project is still included in the tentative. We have set over $77 million program in our tentative for that. On the right-hand side, we have a safety operational improvement project that's in the southeast region of the district, State Road 60 passing lanes for Blanket Bay, Slow to P Vine Trail. Design is in 24, right-of-way is funded 24, 25, and the construction for that project is in 25. We have a significant resurfacing project along US 192 from Bamboo Lane to Main Street. Construction is funded in fiscal year 25, slightly over $24 million there. Now for Seminole, we have a resurfacing project on the left-hand side, State Road 434 from 436 to Mobile Avenue. Construction for that project is funded in 28, over close to $15 million. And then on the right-hand side, we have an intersection improvement project on State Road 434. This is actually just additional right-of-way funding that was added to this project. There was a right-of-way was already presented in our prior tentative or adopted what is now. There was about almost close to $2 million that was added to that project. And then we have a pedestrian detection system that is going in along State Road 436 from North Lake Boulevard to Boston Avenue. That includes construction operations and ITS activities funded in the first year of the tentative 24, and that's close to $1 million. I mentioned local agency projects. We did have some deferrals of projects that were moved out from where they were intended originally, but these were coordinated with our local agencies as well as through MetroPlan. So these are the 4 projects that have been moved out within our local agency programs. If I'm not mistaken, though, all of these are still within the tentative, so they're not deleted. A couple of department projects that were deferred. I will say that these projects were deferred by only a year, and the reason why was for project readiness. There was safety improvements as well as additional improvements that were made at the request of the department, and that's why we need a little bit more time so we can put them out. So 3 of those projects represent the additional improvements. One project was a priority of a bridge repair that needed to happen. It was a mechanical improvement that needed to occur before a maintenance or preventive activity of the other bridge. So they would swap those in the bottom right-hand corner. And then deletions, I mentioned we had the administrative. These are considered deletions because the numbers did disappear. But again, the projects still remain within the tentative work program. That first one is for the US 1792 at Pleasant Hill. It's where we deleted the -7, but introduced the -6 segment for that project. And then we have 437-200-1 US 1792 at County Road 54. That project -2 was deleted because it was incorporated into the actual design limits of a project that's already included in our work program. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alexander. That presentation was excellent, and I know that when you went through some of the numbers, it was a little fast for me, and I saw people taking pictures. Can we request that presentation to be
Absolutely.
sent?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great. It was
We could put-
fantastic. It was too good, you know?
I do talk fast. I try to slow down.
Now,
We can provide.
I want to go ahead and open the floor for any questions or comments from anyone. Okay, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And then you can expect this in your inbox. The staff will get it to us. Thank you very
you.
much. Excellent.
Have a great
excellent
holiday.
Information. You too. And we are going to move on to our other presentation, which is the presentation of an active transportation plan by Jennifer Stotts. Thank you so much. I apologize, and I knew that. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Thank you for allowing the Turnpike to present to you today. This is also the draft tentative work program for fiscal years 24 through 28. I'm Jennifer Stoltz. I'm the Planning and Environmental Management Administrator for Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. And for Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties, the Turnpike is proposing to fund $1.4 billion in major projects. You do have an updated work program summary at your place. We were able to add a project, so that is why you have that additional handout, and I will call that out in the presentation. Oops. Okay, so Florida's Turnpike system consists of limited access facilities and provides Florida's residents and visitors with a safe, efficient, and affordable means of travel. Our Turnpike facilities are located in 6 FDOT districts and 19 counties. This is a map that depicts all of our facilities in the MetroPlan region. So we are more than just our Turnpike main line. So we like to share that with folks. Are you doing? Want me to? Okay, I'm sorry. All right, there we go. So although portions of the Turnpike mainline have been around since 1957, the Turnpike Enterprise was formed 20 years ago in 2002. And as part of the One FDOT team, we follow the department's vision and mission as we help meet the state's transportation needs, ensuring value to customers, protecting investors, and managing the Turnpike system in a business-like manner. So speaking of growing transportation needs, in the past 20 years, Florida's population has grown by 31% and the number of registered vehicles has grown 37%. We've also noticed an 80% increase in vehicle miles traveled on the Turnpike system. That is the entire Turnpike system. So all of those facilities I showed you on the earlier map. Good question. Okay. To help meet those needs, the Turnpike primarily receives funding through user tolls as well as concessions at our service plazas. According to our bond covenants, the Turnpike must pay for operations and maintenance first, and this includes the cost to collect and process those toll payments. Then we have to pay off the debts on the bonds issued to construct the major projects. And I do want to note that we have an excellent credit rating. So the Turnpike historically has benefited from some of the lowest borrowing costs in the tolling industry. Then we have to invest our revenue into renewal and replacement, such as resurfacing projects and other recurring improvements. And then finally, the Turnpike uses the remaining funds to pay for capital improvements, such as widenings or interchanges. So the Turnpike has varying ways of determining how projects get funded depending on the project type. And all of our projects must demonstrate a transportation need and then are prioritized accordingly. Each year, we look at observed traffic data and future projections across the entire system. And then we also have to take environmental and economic feasibility into account. And then, of course, stakeholder input is very important and is considered throughout our project development process. Okay, so this is the part I know you all are excited about. In Osceola County, this is a list of funded projects that includes those that are funded through construction. So we've got a widened mainline part and settlement to north of Osceola Parkway. This does include interchange improvements. We've got widened Turnpike mainline, Kissimmee St. Cloud, US 192, 441 to part and settlement. And this does include interchange improvements as well. Widen the main line from milepost 239 to 242, also including a new full interchange at Nolte Road. Okay, and then we've got a resurfacing for the Southern Connector 417. We've got Canoe Creek Service Plaza parking improvements, and we are resurfacing the main line from milepost 227 to 235. Okay, moving on to Orange County, we've got a new interchange at Sand Lake Road. We have interchange improvements at the Beach Line West. And we've got a new interchange at Half Island. Okay, Orange County continued. The Hempel Avenue Bridge replacement over State Road 408. This is the project that was added to the work program summary that's at your place. And so we appreciate MetroPlan staff in helping us update the presentation. so that we could get this additional project in front of you this morning. We also have a Tismo interchange improvement at Ocoee State Road 50, another Tismo interchange improvement on the Beach Line West at John Young, another Tismo interchange improvement on the Western Beltway, and resurfacing the Southern Connector for 417. All right, and then we have an Orange into Brevard County on the Beach Line. This is an ITS improvement. Okay, moving on to Seminole County. We are resurfacing the Seminole Expressway 417 from milepost 50 to 55 and widening the Seminole Expressway 417 from Aloma to 434. This does include interchange improvements. There is a table I would also add. So these are all the projects that are funded through construction. There are other projects that I know you all are interested in. In your handout, the first page has current construction projects. So in other words, projects that were funded in prior fiscal years that may still be under construction. Those haven't gone away. They have just fallen out of the 5-year work program. They're already funded. They are already under construction. They're still happening. So there is a summary table at the beginning of your document that it contains those projects. And then the last 2 pages of your document contain other projects that are in the PD&E preliminary engineering design right-of-way phases. So they are not yet funded through construction in the 5-year work program. But, you know, in a future year work program, you may see those funded through construction. But again, we want to assure folks that those projects that you're interested in are in there. And it just because they weren't in the presentation, they are on your handouts. So I wanted to just mention that. And with that, I will bookend Ms. Alexander's presentation with the 5-year work program website where we are all on the same platform. It does not matter. District 5, Turnpike, all of our projects are here on the same platform. And you can visit this public hearing website and download any of the information or send any of your constituents that may have comments there as well. So, Madam Chairwoman, with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
And if I can, before we open it up, can we also have this presentation sent to us?
Yes.
This is great information, and I appreciate the link also. I do
Thank
want to
you.
open the floor for any questions or comments, Commissioner Grebe, and then I'll get you guys.
I just wanted to thank you from Osceola County for continuing to work with us. Our rapid growth and everything happening, coming down to visit and seeing what our challenges are. So looking forward to continue working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a question. I'm not sure it's directly to you, but somebody in the room has the answer to it. CFX is doing a PD&E study or a feasibility study for the 417 connector to the Sanford Airport, but it would connect to the Turnpike section of 417. Is that project going to be owned by CFX? The Turnpike, do we not know? And at what point do we start getting it into the plan?
Mayor, the information that I've received recently from CFX is they're doing some stakeholder meetings currently during November and December. And they anticipate having a first public meeting for that project, I believe in March, with a draft report coming out. And they're doing the feasibility study of that. Whether it's going to be maintained by the Turnpike or CFX, I do not know the answer to that. Jennifer, do you?
I don't, we obviously coordinate very closely with CFX because we do have overlapping projects, but they are taking the lead in the study.
And then just to follow up, at what point will that project start showing up in one of the 5-year plans? After the feasibility study?
Once it moves beyond the feasibility study, whether it's the Turnpike or CFX, they will provide it to us. And those projects are in our plan for information purposes. The board does not control either of those two organizations or their project list, but it would be provided to us and we would incorporate it into the long range plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Green.
Yes, I think I'm going to follow up on the mayor's comment. We haven't seen anywhere in the process at all, and the 417 connector to the airport, that's a major and needed and timely because of the homeowners and I think some of the building going on around there. So once it gets on a radar, which again we haven't seen yet, and the importance is a little surprising we haven't, is how quickly can it accelerate to something that with a need to acquire the land and actually make that happen. Kurt.
I don't have the answer for that. I think we'll have to wait for the feasibility study from CFX.
I think Commissioner Zimbauer has an answer to that question.
Both of you get with my office, I'll bring you right up to date as of yesterday. I have all those details. Be happy to share it with you.
Fantastic. Commissioner Gomez Cordero.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Jennifer. I just wanted to confirm, you said that these projects were funded, only the last one that you said are not funded.
Yes, sorry for the confusion. The projects in the presentation are all funded through construction. In your handout at your place with the blue ribbon at the top, there are projects at the back. There is a table at the back of that handout. And those projects are funded for a phase. They are just not funded all the way through construction. So they may be funded for the PD&E study, for the preliminary engineering and design, or for a right-of-way phase. They just aren't funded all the way through construction. So I don't want anybody to panic thinking they're not in the presentation. They're not happening. They are moving forward. They're just not as far along in our process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stotts. Just want to make sure no one else has a question or comment. All right, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the information. We are going to move on now to public comment in the general nature. These are just comments
Madam
that.
Chair, we still have one brief presentation for you on the active transportation by Taylor.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right, so I'm so sorry. You are recognized.
That is perfectly fine. I will keep it brief so we can keep going. So thanks for the opportunity to present on our recently kicked off project for the active transportation plan. Today, I'll just give you a very brief introduction and overview of the study, as well as a quick debrief of what happened at the Community Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Committee workshops back in October. So to really get started, an active transportation plan for us is going to be our opportunity to refresh and reassess our bicycle and pedestrian needs throughout Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties through the year 2050. And we're doing that because we're ultimately trying to wrap up these feasible project recommendations and incorporate them into our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. I know it feels early to be talking about 2050, but it's coming a lot sooner than we think. So throughout the course of the project, there will be 5 key tasks that we undertake, and I'll go through each of them on these coming slides. The first is engagement. So we just kicked off our first steering committee meeting with a diverse group of representatives from throughout our 3 counties. The Technical Advisory Committee and Community Advisory Committee meeting workshops. We've had one here at the beginning of the study, and we'll have another towards the midpoint for another check-in with these committees. There will be several periods of public engagement. The first will be beginning in early 2023. I'll come back to that in a minute. And then there will be briefings just like this one today to keep you updated on the progress of our active transportation plans development. Task 2 is data collection. So we're really in the existing conditions and planned phase right now, trying to figure out exactly what's existing, what's planned to be constructed through 2050, and then also pulling in additional information to help us assess project feasibility. So that right-of-way information, transit stop location, ridership data, crash and demographic information. So we can incorporate those safety elements and make sure that we're really focusing on the future of our 3 counties with future land use, as well as some policy reviews to make sure that we're consistent with local policies. When it comes to tasks 3 and 4, bicycle and pedestrian system planning, these are a bit more technical. This is where we're looking at accessibility from where people are starting their bicycle and pedestrian trips to where they're trying to go. And is that a low stress trip or a high comfort trip, or is that something else? So we're looking at not only the direct connection, but who we're serving and making sure that we have the right facilities to be able to serve that population. So when I mentioned that, we're looking at level of traffic stress. So it'll be like golf scores when you start seeing it towards the end of the study. Level 1 means it's low stress. Level 4 means high stress. So as we bring all this information together, the final active transportation plan, we're anticipating it being both a static and interactive web-based product at the end of the study. We'll be leaning towards keeping it more infographics and reducing that technical content as much as possible, but also making sure that we're incorporating and collaborating with our other modal plans that are in development, like the TISMO master plan that we heard a little bit about earlier today. So this study we've recently kicked off in October, and by this time next year, we will be seeing a final presentation of the active transportation plan. When it comes to engagement, you heard about those workshops that just started in October, as well as our first steering committee in November. There will be our upcoming public engagement campaign to start getting that public feedback starting in early 2023. And we will include more information about that as soon as it goes live to you to help get your feedback, to get your help spreading the word throughout our communities. There will be several other steering committee meetings and those committee workshops later on throughout the study. Now, these workshops that I've kept mentioning, this was our opportunity to check in with our technical and community advisory committees to look at both our existing bicycle and pedestrian networks, as well as what's planned through 2050. So we can look at what's on the map, make sure that one, we know that anything that's planned, if it's been constructed, like you see on this picture, it's done. We want to make sure that we're up to date on our latest information and starting off our project on the right foot. But also looking for that feedback of whether there's a facility that's been on the map for 20 years. Is that still a need? And if so, is it still a feasible project? And if it's not, making some adjustments to better serve that need through another recommended project facility. So we requested this feedback immediately following both the TAC and CAC meetings through an interactive workshop format spread throughout the office, and received a lot of really good feedback and engagement that we have been incorporating into our work, getting ready for that public engagement campaign in 2023. So again, this is being used as a kind of step one for our study for existing conditions. And there'll be a lot more opportunities for public feedback and feedback from our partners throughout the study. So I promised to keep it brief, made it through. If anyone does have any questions, I'm available.
That was
to talk about
fantastic.
it.
Before I open the floor, I just have one quick question. Is there a focus on safety? You know, when we look at pedestrian safety, I know that you talked about your stress. What about safety and perspective of all those things for bicyclists and pedestrians?
Yes, so we're incorporating, I kind of went through it very quickly, the crash statistics to look at problem areas that are known, as well as asking our partners to help identify areas where there may have been a lot of near misses, where it's an area that there's a lot of speeding. We're pulling in that information as well to identify areas where we can make those facilities more comfortable and more safe.
Okay, I'll open it up. Commissioner Wilson.
A quick question about the upcoming engagements, public engagements. Are they going to be sort of geographically, or is it, are you kind of trying to just get a broad net for those public engagements as far as feedback, and how do we help share that information? Because I do think it's a really important conversation.
So it's going to be a combination of both of what you described. There will be a general survey asking about key factors that we're going to need some help with and some feedback from our partners throughout the study. And then there's going to be an interactive online comment tool where you can search for your address in the address bar, zoom into your area, and leave little pinpoints on the map with your comments. That'll be open to the public starting January-ish. We're looking towards the end of January, and we'll include more information as soon as that goes live.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Of course.
Commissioner Gomez Cordero. Oh, okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for your brief presentation, and we look forward to hearing more. All right, we are now going to move on to the public comments in the general fashion. These are just general in nature, and I wanted to ask Miss Lisa if we have any comment cards here that are in person.
I have not received any.
Thank you very much. And do you know if we have anyone online with a comment?
I don't see any hands raised online.
Fantastic. I want to go on to board member comments. Do we have any comments from anyone on the board? Seeing none, just a special thank you to Carson Good for a great Terminal C event last Tuesday. Excellent job. Thank you. And Mayor Demings, you're recognized.
All right, yes, I wanted to just take a moment and acknowledge while the sales tax initiative that we had in Orange County did not pass, I do owe a debt of gratitude to my board members who supported the initiative, to many of you who are here in the room who supported the initiative, and to our staff at Orange County who did a lot of heavy lifting over the last year and a half It's unfortunate that it didn't pass because it really would have created a transformative opportunity for our community to really tackle some of the major issues centered around transit and transportation. But, you know, we expended a lot of political capital during that period of time. And those are the things that we could control. What we could not control were some of the things that occurred immediately prior to the election in November. We couldn't control the fact that within weeks before the election, there was a major hurricane that displaced a number of people from their homes and created, I think, financial stress for a lot of people. We couldn't control the fact that there was a significant increase in property insurance, casualty insurance. We couldn't control the fact that inflation went up. We couldn't control that rent prices, rent went through the roof during the summer months into the fall. And because of all of that, I think that it put the sales tax, the potential for passing somewhat in jeopardy. We were monitoring through different polls and surveys over time, and we saw that really up until the point just prior to the Hurricane Ian coming, we were always, above the 50% threshold for passing. And we went in the field and did some polling just after that, a week and a half or so after. And for the first time, the polling indicated we were underwater. So I tie that to the untenable circumstances associated with those last few weeks, including the hurricane. So many people ask me, what does that mean for the future for transit within our community? What it means is that we won't have a major dedicated funding source, at least for Orange County. What it means is that the $21 billion need that we had in our community still remains. So how do we address it? We will make applications where we can for federal infrastructure dollars or state dollars or other private sector funds. We'll have to break up the mammoth transformative plan into small parts that would have to be undertaken over a number of years. And then will we go back and try this again in 2024, because we can only put it on the ballot during a general election period of time, and that would be 2024 during the presidential election cycle. The answer to that question, at least from my perspective, is I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Timing is everything with these types of situations. And so we will again look at the circumstances at that time and make some determination whether or not it's a viable option for us at that point in time. And because in order to get it on the ballot, you really have to start the process months before. And so it creates the opportunity for a lot of things to change before election day. And so, so we will just have to wait and see whether or not that is something. I thought that from a regional perspective, with Orange County kind of being the hub of the region in terms of economic activity and a major growth occurring within Orange, it's central to, I think, the overall success of the region in terms of addressing the myriad of transportation issues and other growth challenges that we have. So I'm saying to all of you, I do appreciate the support that we received during that initiative, and that's the update that I will give you going forward. So we will continue to work with our board of county commission within Orange to kind of wrestle with some of the issues that we have before us, and the potential for the re-governance structure of links versus Sunrail and how all of that really impacts the entire region and mobility within our region. I do think that we have to have multimodal options. If we want to be a world-class community, we need to have world-class transportation options within our community that are truly multimodal. So thank you again, and thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Demings. With that and seeing no other comments, our next board meeting will be February 8th of 2023. Want to wish everyone a happy holidays and happy new year. Thank you so much. We're adjourned.